How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport, and welcome to another video featuring my 1989 Honda Accord LXI that I picked up in Miami from the original owner with less than 40,000 miles on it. I will link that video. It was such a fun trip, and it was so cool to be able to drive that car back after it sat with the gentleman just starting it up from time to time for many years. So it made it all the way back, but that was not without any issues with the car. So one of the big issues that this car has had since I got it was no power steering, because the power steering rack was shot, a very common issue with these cars. So I did a lot of research and wanted to get a good or decent steering rack, because I've heard endless stories of how they just fail over and over again. And I found this one at AutoZone online, and apparently it's not shipped directly from AutoZone. It is shipped from maybe this company here, because that's what was inside the package. And then ironically, this is what it says on the actual label. So it is a drop ship, obviously, and the brand of this is a unique brand. So the brand is True Grade or True Grade Endurance. I'm not 100% sure on that. And I asked around a couple people that had done these before, and they said, yeah, if it's from AutoZone, that's one that they've heard is good without many issues. There's a lot of brands out there, from what I was told, that seem to fail over and over again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this one's good. And from what I know, my power steering pump is fine. There's no issues with that. I do want to flush everything, so we'll flush out the lines and the pump as well, and we'll get this thing installed. Now, I've never done this. I couldn't find any videos on it, and I got under the car. It looked pretty simple, so let's go ahead now. I've already started doing some work on it just because I didn't want to start the video without knowing anything. So let's go ahead now and get underneath the car and see what we got to take off and how we're going to get this old rack out and the new one in. Okay, so underneath the car, you can see the steering rack, and other than popping our tie rod ends off, we are going to have to take some of these braces off. So this cover here, and then there's a brace over here and a brace on the other side. And obviously we're gonna have to take our wheels off, because I think we're gonna be able to slide this whole thing out one of these directions here. And this entire brace here is gonna have to come down too, I believe. Not 100% sure. I'm not sure if it can slide through if we pull it out. So let's go ahead and just start taking stuff off. I'll save this brace for last and see if we can just slide it out that way after popping our tie rod ends off. Go ahead and take this cover off just to see what's underneath there, because obviously we're gonna have to take our lines off as well. And I think there's gonna be another brace up under here because we got this one off, and I'm guessing there's gonna be another one up under here that needs to come off. We'll just kind of take things off and see where we're at, and I'll kind of fill you in, and we'll slide this thing out once we get to the point that we can. And these are 10 millimeter. They were 12 millimeter on that brace. And here's the piece that receives all of the fluid and pumps it. And we're gonna go ahead and take off our lines once we've got everything off that we know we need to get off to slide it out. And there is another brace up underneath here. Okay, I'm hoping I can get a good angle for you guys, but the more that I'm looking at it, in order to get this entire assembly out, obviously we gotta take off these lines, which won't be a big deal because there's no fluid in the system right now. So that'll make that easy. But we're going to have to get this to either slide out some way. And the way that I'm seeing is we're gonna have to go this direction first and get our tie rod to come all the way to here so we can then drop it down and slide it out. But in order to do that, that brace that I was showing you guys is gonna have to come out. And so it's gonna have to come out there. I think there's two bolts here, two nuts here that we're gonna have to pull out. And then all the bolts right up here. So we'll drop this whole thing, and that will allow us to slide everything that direction till our tie rod reaches, like I said, right here, and then we can pull that down, kind of slide everything out. But I think I'll show you guys that. I'm hoping that's the way this is going to come out. Doesn't seem like a whole bunch of work. These are 14 millimeter bolts in this assembly here. So this brace that goes across are 14 millimeter bolts holding it in. So let's pop those off. Okay, on these lines, you've got 17 millimeter, 12, 12, and this back one here, I'm hoping is not stripped, but 12 or 13 won't work on it. And I got a 15 on the other end here, and that's just a little too loose. So it might be a 14, which I might just have to use an open end wrench because I don't have a line wrench for that. But let's go ahead and crack these. All right, now that cracked nice and easy. There may be a little fluid in here, but it should have mostly drained out. Yeah, there's gonna be a little fluid. Let me grab a little pan to get that. All right, I got our tire and rim off, and that gives us access to our outer tie rod that we need to pop off. We need to pull this cotter pin out. There's a castle nut on there. The new steering rack comes with the inner tie rod already in there and your boot and all that stuff, so that's great. Does not come with an outer tie rod, so I think I'm gonna actually go ahead and get those. You will see all this on this video, but I'm gonna go ahead and order those. I may be able to get them locally, but I'm pretty sure I've got to order them. But I don't want to start off with any used components on this entire assembly here. And it comes, ironically, the steering rack came with your new cotter pins here, so I'll have new pins to stick in there. Won't have to worry about bending those all up. So we'll pop that out, take our castle nut off. I've got a little tie rod removal tool. You slide on there and tighten up, it pops it up. So we'll go ahead and use that to get these off and slide this whole thing out, and you'll see all the new pieces going back in. But it seems like everything is going pretty smooth. Hopefully my idea works where we can slide this whole thing out through that. I don't think we're gonna be able to squeeze it through there, but you know, we'll maneuver it around and see exactly how it comes out. All right, so before I go ahead and take this off, I wanted to notate this. This is a 19mm nut here. I loosened this up by holding our tie rod end, and there's a little nut here. You can see it's loose now. I want to be able to take this tie rod off just to give me a little more room when pulling this out from snagging on things. Also, you want to notate how many threads are on the back of this so you can try to get your alignment as close as possible. I only have like 2 threads showing after this bolt gets completely tightened down onto it. So I notated that. I also went ahead and grabbed my tie rod removal tool. I highly suggest renting one of these. You can rent them for free. You basically put a deposit. This is from AutoZone, and that's the number there if you want to go ahead and rent this. But it pops right off. I think it uses a 19mm nut on the end, either 17 or 19. Yeah, it looks like 19 on the end here. It slides up under there, and you guys will see me do that and just tighten it up, and it pops your tie rod end off. And I already went ahead and realized this is a 17mm castle nut on the tie rod, so I'll go ahead and pop that off, and I'll show you guys that, and we'll move forward. Pop right off. Nice and easy. That's what I love about this tool. One of my favorite tools. Of course, I just dropped it in the oil. But one of my favorite tools for doing this. Now we should, yeah, this tie rod end should come off real easily. And we can keep that nut in place. So if we want to count how many threads we go up, we can do that too. But this is on there almost all the way. So kind of notate that. Like I said, you can reuse these tie rod ends, but I'm going to go ahead and order some new ones. That way we got new tie rod ends on there. Let's go ahead and repeat this to the other side, and then I'll fill you in on how I slide everything out. So now we're inside the car because there is a collar that we need to remove a bolt that goes through. I have already done this, and I'm not afraid to admit I had to do a little research and reached out to a couple people who have done these before, and they let me know that on this model you have to pull up the carpet. I did remove this little sleeve that goes over our steering column, our shaft there, and then I was able to easily pull back this carpet, and I went ahead and put this little plate back in there. You can see this little plate right here. There are these little clips. Now these do screw on there. I did pop one off. I ended up using this little pry tool here, and then I realized that they actually threaded, so I went ahead and spun the other ones off. I don't think it's a big deal that I popped it off because they're not real strong threads, but there's little bolts that kind of stick out of your bottom piece here, and then you can pull this panel off. So once you get this panel off, you will have really good access to where the shaft kind of goes into the collar. So this bolt right here, it's a 10mm bolt, is going to go through that end piece. Now I went ahead and recorded that as I was undoing it, so you guys can have a better idea. The bolt does look just like this one, but let me go ahead and show you how it looked while I was undoing it. And you can see I went ahead and used an open end wrench. You could easily fit a socket down there, but I only had deep well sockets for my 1/4 inch drive. And if I had the shallow, it would have been pretty easy to get that in there. And then eventually you might have to use an open end wrench just because the bolt is pretty long. I did remove the bolt completely. I don't know if that was necessary, but I could not get that piece of the shaft to come out of that collar until I removed the bolt completely. Now, this is where I'm at. So this does not want to come out, this steering rack at all, because I'm still hitting. So I'm still hitting the inner tie rods on this frame piece here, and that does not come off from what I can see. So asked around and somebody told me, just go ahead and cut those inner tie rods off your old one. Kind of a pain on the butt, but I've tried everything to get it out without doing that. You know, even if I removed my exhaust, which I still might have to do, it's not gonna come out with the angle that it has on those inner tie rods. So gonna go ahead and suck it up and remove those, or cut off the ones on here, because I don't need them. I've got brand new inner tie rods, brand new outer tie rods, and we'll go ahead and pull this whole thing down and kind of investigate on how we can get the new one in. Guys, many days later and a lot of struggle, finally got the steering rack out. And I did a lot of unnecessary things. I've been going back and forth with somebody in the forums about how to get all this out. And finally he said, just go ahead and separate it right here and it should pull right out, and it did. It pulled right out. And I'm gonna explain to you what I did and what was unnecessary, but also did kind of help. So I ended up pulling this side of our sway bar off because I thought it would be necessary for me to unbolt. There's 2 big bolts that go up into this framework that hold your steering rack, and that allowed me to drop it down a little bit. Now, kind of unnecessary because this is all one piece and your steering rack slides in there, and I thought that would allow me to get the shaft that goes up into the steering column to drop down, because that was my issue. I'll show you guys that now. I think I'm going crazy because so far I've dropped down this frame here that the steering rack slides into, goes all the way down, and I still cannot get that shaft right there to drop down. It is still sticking up at least a 1/4 of an inch. How it still had like a 1/4 of an inch that just would not come out no matter what I tried to do. And finally, when I separated the thing in the middle, it pulled apart. Now, I think the issue was I didn't have the steering centered when I dropped this down, and I had too much on one side, and there's just not a whole lot of play. Once the steering rack is put up in there and it's centered, it really just slides in barely. So with the new one going in, I've been going back and forth, like I said. I'm gonna go ahead and center this steering rack, and the way that I've seen online how to do this is you go ahead and turn your shaft using a rag and some pliers all the way one direction, and then count how many turns to go all the way to the other direction, and you just divide that by 2, and that's your midway point. So if I turn this all the way one way and I turn it back full 2 turns, then 1 turn back would be the exact middle. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be close enough. And then we're going to center our steering wheel inside the car before we attach our steering column to the shaft here, and lock that in place the best we can, so we're going to be close. We're also going to add our tie rod ends on the same way they were on before. Now, if you guys didn't notice, I cut off my outer tie rods, or my inner tie rods, I'm sorry, because I thought that would allow me to just pull it out. I was getting so frustrated. I said, you know what, let me go ahead and grab my Sawzall, cut those off. I don't think that's necessary either, because then it would never go in. So you don't need to, from what I know, remove any of these things to get this to go back in. It's going to be a struggle, I have a feeling, but I'm hoping that goes a lot smoother than the removal. Now, the one thing you definitely have to do is drop your exhaust down. So I went ahead and removed it from right there. So basically where it goes into the manifold, your down pipe just needs to be dropped down. Mine was not attached on that piece, so it was real nice. I unbolted the 4 nuts, dropped it down, and everything kind of just pulled right out. So that made it real easy. Now, one more thing is you need to transfer all your rubber pieces. So the one here, and there is one that was on the shaft that I put on here, and I think there's one on the inside too. I have to double check that because I dropped down my framework. Some of those became loose, so I got to make sure that's all in place. And then there's one more I've got sitting around here that goes on in between where this bolts up to that framework. So you should be able to align that one. I'm guessing that one goes here and the other one somewhere along here. So just make sure you get all those transferred over so you don't have any vibration issues. With that said, let's go ahead and slide this back in. It's too hard to film up underneath there, so I'm going to fill you guys in on how I do it, any suggestions I have. But like I said, this is a lot of documenting for me in case I need to do this in the future, as well as if one of you guys have to do this and you need some help with it. But I did not do this without any issues, so I ran into a lot of problems. So hopefully some of the issues that I had helps you guys out. So let's get this back in there. Yes. Yeah. All right, we're in. So now we just got to pull this up, tighten everything up, and we can align everything, make sure we've got everything attached. Now we're not going to attach our hose lines, but we do need to make sure none of them are getting jammed up here because we're going to bleed the system. I want to blow air through them, get new fluid in them, and get everything flushed out. So 6 threads on this one. So we want to put this nut on until we have about 6 threads showing, and then we'll take our new Duralast. That is the part number for our tie rod end. I was able to pick these up same day from AutoZone. Let's go ahead and count our thread. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect, right there. It's not going to be exact, but it should allow you to drive it over to get it aligned, and my shop is right around the corner, so shouldn't have any issues. Tie rod end does come with the new castle nut. All right. Also your pin. Pretty simple, just thread it on, and it's going to sandwich between our nut, and you tighten the nut to it. Make sure your tie rod end is facing down when you reach the end. So right about right there. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. That looks just about right. Now I'm going to go ahead and align our steering wheel inside before attaching our tie rod ends. We already aligned our steering rack so it's equal on both sides. Now we should be able to center our steering wheel and tighten up our collar, and we should be pretty close. So now we're just gonna have to get alignment after that. So let's jump in the car now and tighten that up. Guys, we move on to the fun part, which is aligning our steering wheel. So this is really the home stretch. We need to get our steering wheel as straight as possible here because we've already aligned our rack by measuring the 2 inner tie rods before putting it up in there. So it should be very close. And we also put our tie rod ends on similar to the way that they were when we took them off. So it's not going to be perfect. We do need to get this down to a shop and have it done properly so the tires don't wear out, and also just to be safe. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock our steering wheel because it's locked, put it in position, probably tie it down. Maybe I know a lot of people use the seat belt here. I've also got my friend Xavier here, so I might have him just hold it in position. And then I need to get down here and get our bolt back in over our little sleeve there. So that's going to slide up over our post that comes up through the steering rack down there. So reverse roll of what we did before. So let's get down there. You're not going to see any of that, but we're going to go ahead and get it aligned, and I wanted to explain what we're going to be doing. And just like that, everything is back together. But I do have to say, having a friend made a world of difference. It really helps out a lot having somebody holding that steering wheel. And also, you need to drop your steering rack back down. So those brackets that hold it in, you need to lower those back down to be able to get that steering shaft sleeve over your post. So the post coming up from your steering rack, that the sleeve slides over where the bolt goes through. And then you need to raise it back up. So what I did was I went under the car, I lowered down my steering rack, got in the car, slid the sleeve over the steering rack shaft, had my friend hold the steering wheel, and then I got under there and tightened up those U-bolts again, which pushed that post up into our steering shaft. And then I was able to get back in the car and tighten our locking bolt in there. Everything came out real good. And as you can see, this is the driver's side here. Looks pretty centered. Obviously not going to be perfect. And we come around this way. Definitely going to be drivable up a mile down the road so I can get it aligned. Now I do have to still flush the system, so I don't have the power steering hooked up right now. So I don't have the belt on, and I also have the lines going down to the rack disconnected because I need to flush those lines, but I got to get some fluid in. I got to get the belts in. So this is going to wrap up this video. Once again, this is the first time I've ever done this, and I had a lot of guidance from some people in forums, and I'm very, very appreciative that the community for this car has been absolutely amazing, and I couldn't have done it without some of these people's help. So definitely join on Facebook group 3Gs. There's a couple of groups out there, and that'll help you out if you have one of these cars. And don't be afraid to tackle jobs like this. It can be a little intimidating, and as you can see, it took me quite a bit of time. But now that I've done it, I can probably do it over and over again and kind of guide people through doing it because it's pretty straightforward. It just takes a lot of maneuvering around and understanding of what needs to be lowered, what doesn't. But with that said, guys, you have an awesome day, a blessed week, and I'll catch you on the next video.